Sometimes the things we save end up saving us. Clay Harner learned that truth the hard way in the frozen wilderness of Alaska. After a brutal blizzard buries the remote town of Burn Ridge, the 58-year-old widower finds a massive dog half dead in the snow. With his estranged teenage son staying with him for the first time in years, Clay brings the creature home. But this isn't just any dog. It wears a military tracking collar and bears scars from a violent past. As the snow keeps falling and phone lines stay down, Clay starts piecing together why this animal found its way to him. The answers force him to face his own buried pain and make a choice that could bring his son back or push him away forever. What was this dog running from, and why does it recognize Clay? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, subscribe because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The mechanic shop sat at the edge of Burn Ridge like a sentry post, all weathered wood and corrugated metal that groaned in the wind. Clay Harner stood in the open bay door, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better decades. The late afternoon light cut sharp across the snow, turning everything to shades of blue and silver. 58 years old, and he could count on one hand the number of times he'd felt truly warm since Sarah died. 3 years. 3 years of waking up to silence, of coffee made for one, of conversations that never happened because there was nobody left to have them with. The wedding ring he'd worn for 30 years now hung on a silver chain around his neck, tucked beneath his flannel shirt where it rested against his heart. He couldn't bring himself to put it back on his finger, but he couldn't take it off completely either. Some kinds of loss you just learn to carry. The shop had been his salvation and his prison. Engines made sense. You could diagnose a problem, fix it, move on. People were harder, especially teenage sons who looked at you like you were a stranger wearing their father's face. Micah's beat-up Honda sat in the driveway of Clay's cabin, visible through the trees. The boy had arrived 2 hours ago for winter break, their first extended visit in God knew how long. Clay had watched from the shop as Micah unloaded a duffel bag and disappeared inside without so much as a wave. 16 years old and already an expert in silent resentment. Clay couldn't blame him. When Sarah got sick, Clay had retreated into himself, built walls so high even his own son couldn't scale them. After the funeral, those walls became fortresses. The town of Burn Ridge held maybe 200 souls on a good day, scattered across the valley like seeds thrown by a careless hand. Most folks made their living from the land, timber, hunting guides, the occasional brave tourist who wanted to experience real Alaska. Clay fixed their trucks, their generators, their snow machines. He was reliable, fair, and quiet. That's all anyone needed to know. Sheriff Dale Pruitt stopped by most afternoons, more for the company than any official business. They'd known each other 20 years, since Clay first moved here with Sarah when she wanted to escape the noise of Anchorage. Dale understood grief. He'd lost his own wife to a drunk driver a decade back. They didn't talk about it much, but the understanding hung between them like shared breath in cold air. Evelyn Marsh ran the general store, a small woman with steel-gray hair and a maternal instinct she deployed on everyone within range. She'd been leaving casseroles on Clay's porch since Sarah died, always in disposable containers so he wouldn't have to return them. He ate about half of them, the rest went to the ravens. The blizzard had been forecast for 3 days, but weather in this part of Alaska had its own mind. When it hit that morning, it came fast and mean, the kind of storm that reminded you nature didn't care about your plans. By noon, 3 feet of snow had buried the town, and the temperature had dropped to somewhere south of brutal. Clay had checked on the cabin around lunch. Micah was sprawled on the couch, earbuds in, staring at his phone. Clay asked if he needed anything. Micah shook his head without looking up. Clay retreated to the shop, telling himself the boy just needed space, time to settle in. The truth sat heavier. He had no idea how to talk to his own son anymore. The power had flickered twice, but held. The phone line was another story. Cell service in Burn Ridge was spotty on good days, non-existent when the weather turned. Clay had a landline, old-fashioned and reliable, but even that had gone silent by mid-afternoon. The isolation didn't bother him. He'd grown used to it, preferred it even. At least, that's what he told himself. By 4 o'clock, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed. Everything soft and white and absolutely still. Clay needed firewood. The stack by the cabin was running low, and with Micah here, they'd burn through it faster. He pulled on his heavy coat, the old Marine Corps parka he couldn't quite part with, and grabbed the sled from the shed. The woods behind his property stretched for miles, mostly spruce and birch, thick enough to get lost in if you didn't know the trails. Clay knew them. He'd walked them 1,000 times, often with Sarah, back when her laugh could echo through the trees and make the whole forest feel alive. The snow came up past his knees in places. He pulled the sled behind him, following the familiar path to where the deadfall usually collected. The silence was absolute, the kind that made your ears ring. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of his boots and the scrape of the sled. He found the dog about 100 yards in, partially buried under a drift near a fallen spruce. At first, Clay thought it was a bear. The sheer size of it stopped him cold. But then he saw the shape, the way the snow had settled around limbs rather than bulk, and he moved closer. Massive didn't begin to cover it. The animal was easily 150 pounds, maybe more, with thick fur matted with ice and blood. A Tibetan Mastiff, if Clay had to guess, though he'd only ever seen pictures. The kind of dog that cost more than most people's cars. It lay on its side, breathing shallow, eyes closed. One front paw twitched as if dreaming of running. Clay knelt beside it, pulled off his glove, and pressed his hand against the dog's ribs. Still warm. Heartbeat steady but slow. Hypothermia. Probably, but not too far gone. The animal was in bad shape, though. Thin under all that fur, dehydrated, and sporting what looked like old wounds across its shoulder and flank. Then he saw the collar. Heavy-duty, tactical grade, not the kind you picked up at a pet store. It was partially hidden under the fur, but when Clay brushed the ice away, he could see markings. Military issue, maybe, or private security. There was a tag, but the letters were too crusted with ice to read. For a long moment, Clay just sat there in the snow, looking at this creature that had somehow ended up dying in his woods. He should walk away. Should head back to the cabin, call Dale when the phones came back up, let animal control handle it. That would be the smart thing, the safe thing. But something in the dog's face stopped him. The way its muzzle was scarred. The way even unconscious, it looked like it had fought hard and lost harder. Clay recognized that look. He saw it in the mirror most mornings. The sled wasn't built for this kind of weight, but Clay made it work. He'd carried wounded men through worse terrain in another life. The dog was just another body that needed moving. He worked methodically, sliding the animal onto the sled, securing it as best he could with rope from his pocket. The dog didn't wake, didn't resist. Its breathing stayed shallow and even. The walk back took twice as long. Clay's shoulders burned, his bad knee screamed protest, but he kept moving, one foot in front of the other. Marines don't quit, even the ones who've been civilians for 20 years. Micah was at the window when Clay emerged from the tree line. The boy's eyes went wide and he disappeared from view. By the time Clay reached the porch, Micah was outside, coat half on, staring at the sled. "What the hell is that?" "Dog," Clay said, breathing hard. "Found it in the woods. Help me get it inside." For the first time since he'd arrived, Micah looked directly at his father. Really looked, not just the blank stare that said he'd rather be anywhere else. "Is it alive?" for now. They worked together without discussion, Clay taking the front, Micah the back. The dog was dead weight, and getting it up the porch steps required all the strength both of them had. Inside, they laid it on an old blanket Clay spread in front of the wood stove. The fire was low. Clay built it back up, adding logs until the heat pushed out in waves. Micah crouched beside the animal, tentative. "Is it going to die?" "Not if I can help it," Clay said. He went to the kitchen, filled a pot with warm water, grabbed clean towels. When he came back, Micah was still there, one hand hovering over the dog's head like he wanted to touch it but wasn't sure if he should. "It's okay," Clay said quietly. "He's not going to bite." Micah's hand settled gently on the dog's fur. "How do you know it's a he?" "Just a guess." They worked in the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, wasn't loaded with all the things they hadn't said to each other. Clay cleaned the wounds he could see, checked for breaks, monitored the dog's breathing. Micah held the water, passed towels, asked questions that were actually questions, not accusations disguised as curiosity. "Where did he come from?" "Don't know." "Why does he have that collar?" "Don't know that either." The collar, now that Clay could see it properly in the firelight, was definitely military grade. Heavy nylon, reinforced with what looked like Kevlar threading. The tag was metal, stamped with letters that were still partially obscured. Clay worked it free, held it to the light. K9 unit, Titan, below that, a serial number. Nothing else. No unit designation, no contact information. Just a name and a number. "Titan," Micah said softly. "That fits." The dog's breathing began to deepen as the warmth from the fire worked through its system. After about an hour, its eyes flickered open, dark, intelligent, wary. The animal's gaze swept the room, assessed, calculated. Then it found Clay and held. For a moment, neither moved. Clay felt something pass between them, recognition of a sort he couldn't name. The dog didn't growl, didn't try to rise. It just watched him with an intensity that felt almost human. "Hey there," Clay said quietly. "You're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you." The dog's eyes moved to Micah, then back to Clay. Slowly, carefully, its tail thumped once against the floor. Micah let out a breath he'd been holding. "I think he likes us. Or he's too tired to care," Clay said, but there was no conviction in it. They sat with the dog as evening fell and the cabin grew dark except for the firelight. Clay made soup, heated it, brought bowls for both of them. They ate on the floor near the stove, and when Clay offered some to the dog in a shallow dish, the animal lapped weakly at the broth. "We should give him a name," Micah said. "He already has one." "Titan." "I mean, yeah, but that's from the collar. What if we call him something else, something that's ours?" Clay looked at his son, saw something in his face he hadn't seen in years. Hope, maybe. Or just the simple desire to claim something good in a world that felt like it took more than it gave. "He's not staying," Clay said. "Soon as the phones come back up, we'll find out who he belongs to." "But what if nobody claims him?" "Someone will. Dog like this doesn't just appear. Out of nowhere." Micah's face closed off again, the brief moment of connection folding back in on itself. He finished his soup in silence, rinsed his bowl, and headed to his room without another word. Clay sat alone with the dog, listening to the fire pop and settle. Outside, the night pressed close. No stars, no moon, just endless black and the weight of snow on the roof. Clay's hand found the wedding ring under his shirt, held it for a moment, then let it drop. The dog, Titan, watched him with eyes that seemed to understand more than they should. "You and me both," Clay said to the animal, "lost and trying to figure out where we belong." The dog's tail thumped twice, and then it closed its eyes and slept. Clay sat there a while longer, feeling the warmth of the fire and the ache in his chest that might have been loneliness or might have been something close to hope. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. Morning brought weak sunlight through the cabin windows and the smell of coffee. Clay woke on the couch, stiff and sore, his back complaining about the night spent sitting half upright. Titan lay exactly where they'd left him, but his eyes were open now, tracking Clay's movement across the room. "You're looking better," Clay said, filling the kettle. The dog's tail wagged once, slow and deliberate. Micah emerged from his bedroom looking rumpled but more rested than he'd been in days. He went straight to Titan, crouched beside him, ran a hand through the thick fur. "Hey, big guy, how you feeling?" The dog's response was immediate. He lifted his head, pressed his muzzle into Micah's palm, and for the first time since they'd found him, tried to stand. His legs wobbled, but he made it up, swaying like a drunk but upright. "Dad, look." Clay turned from the stove, watched the massive animal take 3 shaky steps before sitting heavily on his haunches. "Stubborn," he said, but there was approval in his voice. "That's good. Means he's got fight left." They worked together to get Titan outside to relieve himself, a process that involved both of them supporting his weight down the porch steps. The dog managed, then stood in the snow looking at the tree line like he was trying to remember something important. "What's he looking at?" Micah asked. "Whatever he left behind out there." Back inside, Clay examined Titan more thoroughly in the morning light. The scars were more visible now, old and well-healed but telling a story of violence. The bullet graze on his shoulder was unmistakable once you knew what to look for. The knife wound on his flank spoke of close-quarters combat. This wasn't a pet that had gotten lost. This was a working animal that had seen action. Clay ran his fingers over the collar again, studying it with the attention he'd give to a complex engine. Heavy-duty nylon webbing, double-stitched with what looked like Kevlar thread. Military-grade buckles, resistant to cutting or breaking. And that tag, stamped metal with letters that caught the light. "Hand me my reading glasses," Clay said. "Top drawer by the sink." Micah retrieved them, and Clay held the tag close. K9 unit, Titan. Below it, a serial number, 2847 KW9, and below that, nearly worn off, what looked like Cyrillic letters. "Is that Russian?" Micah asked, peering over his shoulder. "Could be." "Why would a dog have Russian writing on his collar?" "That's a good question." Clay pulled out his phone, tried to get a signal. Nothing. The cell tower was probably iced over and the landline was still dead. He'd have to wait until communications came back up to make any calls. Part of him was relieved. The longer Titan stayed anonymous, the longer he could stay, period. Micah had his laptop open on the kitchen table. "I got some internet earlier," he said. "Before it cut out, I looked up that serial number." Clay felt something tighten in his chest. And there was a partial hit on a military working dog database, but it said the information was classified. Restricted access only. Restricted how? Government, military, that kind of thing. It wouldn't let me see more without credentials. Micah looked up, his expression serious. "Dad, what kind of dog needs government clearance?" Clay sat down across from him, the weight of the question settling between them. "The kind that worked in places the government doesn't want people knowing about." "So he's military." "Was military, maybe still is." They both looked at Titan, who had settled by the wood stove again, his eyes half closed but alert. The dog turned his head toward Clay, and something passed between them. Recognition. Understanding. The shared knowledge of what it meant to serve and then be left behind. "Try something for me," Clay said. He stood, positioned himself across the room from Titan, and made a hand signal he remembered from his days working with K9 units in Afghanistan. A closed fist, then 2 fingers pointed down. Titan's response was immediate. He dropped to his belly, head up, eyes locked on Clay, waiting for the next command. Holy shit, Micah breathed. Clay gave another signal, this time a flat palm, fingers spread. Stay. Titan didn't move. One more, palm up, fingers curling inward. Come. The dog rose and walked to Clay, sat precisely at his left heel, professional and perfect. He's trained, Micah said. Like seriously trained. Special operations level, Clay agreed. He scratched behind Titan's ears, felt the animal lean into his touch. You're a soldier, aren't you, boy? The dog's eyes held his, and Clay could have sworn he saw something there. Relief, maybe. Or just the simple comfort of being understood. Clay spent the rest of the morning teaching Micah the hand signals, watching his son work with Titan in the small space of the cabin. The dog responded to commands in what sounded like Russian or something close to it. When Micah stumbled through a few words, he'd looked up online. Titan's ears perked up, and his tail wagged faster. He definitely understands Russian, Micah said, laughing as Titan executed a perfect downstay on command. This is incredible. Clay watched them, felt something shift inside him. This was the first time in 3 years he'd seen Micah genuinely happy. The first time the boy had looked at him without that wall of resentment and hurt. All because of a dog they'd found half dead in the snow. Around noon, the radio on Clay's workbench crackled to life. Dale's voice came through, staticky but clear. Clay, you copy? Clay grabbed the handset. Yeah, Dale. Go ahead. Roads are impassable for another day at least. How are you fixed for supplies? We're good. Got everything we need. You and Micah doing okay up there? Clay looked at his son, who was laughing as Titan gently took a treat from his hand. Yeah, we're doing fine. Good to hear. Listen, I got a strange call on the emergency line. Someone asking about a missing dog. Large breed described as valuable. You see anything like that? Clay's hand tightened on the handset. What kind of person was asking? Didn't give a name. Said they represented the owner, professional type. Asked if I'd checked with property owners on the ridge. You tell them anything? Not yet. Wanted to check with you first. A pause. Clay, this about that animal you mentioned yesterday. Might be. You want me to call them back? Clay watched Titan, saw the way the dog had positioned himself between Micah and the door, protective even in play. Saw the scars, the tactical collar, the evidence of a hard life lived in service. Whoever owned this dog had worked him hard and then lost him. The question was whether they lost him by accident or design. Give me 24 hours, Clay said. I want to look into something first. You going to tell me what? When I know for sure. Dale was quiet for a moment. Don't do anything stupid, Clay. If that dog's valuable, people might come looking. I can handle people. I know you can. That's what worries me. After Clay signed off, he turned to find Micah watching him. The earlier joy faded from his face. Someone's looking for him, aren't they? Sounds like it. Are you going to give him back? Clay looked at Titan, at his son, at the small space they'd carved out of the isolation and grief. 24 hours ago, this cabin had been a tomb. Now it felt like something alive. Not until I know who they are and what they want. That night, Clay retrieved something from the back of his bedroom closet. A locked footlocker, military green, covered in dust. Micah appeared in the doorway as Clay worked the combination, watched as his father lifted the lid. Inside was a life Clay had left behind. Marine Corps dress uniform, pressed and perfect. Ribbons and medals in a felt-lined case. A folded flag, and beneath it all, files. Mission reports, classified documents, things that should have been turned in when he mustered out but somehow hadn't been. You were really in the Marines, Micah said quietly. 20 years. Force recon. Left when your mother got sick. You never told me. You never asked. Clay pulled out a file, opened it to photos of K9 units. We worked with dogs, mostly bomb detection, some personnel protection. The handlers loved those animals more than anything. Did you have a dog? Worked with a few. Never had one assigned to me personally. Clay showed Micah a photo of himself, younger, leaner, standing beside a German shepherd. But I understood them, the bond they form. It's different from civilian dogs. They trust you with their lives, and you trust them with yours. Micah sat on the bed, looking at the photos. Is that why you brought Titan home? Because you recognized what he was? Maybe. Clay closed the file, looked at his son. Or maybe I just couldn't leave him there to die. What are you going to do? Find out who he really belongs to, then decide if they deserve him back. A sound outside made them both freeze. Soft, deliberate, the crunch of snow under careful feet. Titan's head came up in the living room, a low growl building in his chest. Clay moved to the window, pulled the curtain back an inch. In the moonlight reflecting off the snow, he could see them. Boot prints, fresh, circling the cabin in a professional surveillance pattern. Someone had been out there, watching, assessing, while they slept. "Micah," Clay said, his voice calm but commanding. "Get away from the window." "What is it?" "Company. The kind that doesn't knock first." He let the curtain fall, turned to his son. In that moment, something clicked into place. The instincts he'd buried for 20 years, the training that had kept him alive in places most people couldn't imagine, all of it came roaring back. This wasn't about a lost pet. This was something else entirely, and whatever it was, it had just found them. Clay didn't sleep that night. He sat in the darkened living room with his old service pistol across his lap, watching the windows, listening to every sound the cabin made. Titan lay at his feet, alert but calm, trusting Clay's vigil. Micah had wanted to stay up too, but Clay sent him to bed. No point in both of them losing sleep over what might be nothing. Except it wasn't nothing. Those boot prints had been deliberate, professional. Whoever made them knew how to move quietly, how to observe without being seen. They'd checked sight lines, assessed approaches, catalogued vulnerabilities. Clay had done the same thing 100 times in his life, in places where one mistake meant you didn't come home. By dawn, nothing had happened. No approach, no contact, just the tracks in the snow and the knowledge that they were being watched. Clay made coffee, checked the perimeter from every window, and tried to convince himself he was overreacting. Micah emerged from his room looking tired but wired. "Did they come back?" "Not that I saw, but they were here. Someone was watching us." Clay nodded, poured his son a cup of coffee. "Drink this, then we're going to talk." They sat at the kitchen table and Clay told him everything. About the Marines, about force recon, about the missions he couldn't discuss and the ones he wished he could forget. He told him about working with K9 units in Afghanistan, about handlers who treated their dogs like family, about animals that saved lives by finding bombs before they could kill. Micah listened without interrupting, his eyes getting wider as the scope of Clay's past unfolded. When Clay finished, the boy sat back, processing. "So you're like, what, a soldier?" "Was a soldier. Now I'm just a mechanic." "But you still know how to do all that stuff? The tactical stuff? Knowing and doing are different things. I haven't lived that life in a long time. But you could, if you had to." Clay looked at his son, saw the hope there mixed with fear. Micah wanted to believe his father could protect them, could handle whatever was coming. The weight of that expectation settled on Clay's shoulders like familiar gear. "Yeah," he said quietly. "If I had to." Titan padded over, rested his massive head on Clay's knee. The dog's eyes held a question, or maybe an answer. Clay scratched behind his ears, felt the animal lean into his touch. He responds to the hand signals you use, Micah said, like he's been trained by someone with military experience. He has. Question is who and why. Micah pulled his laptop closer, opened it. Before the internet cut out yesterday, I did some more digging. That Cyrillic on his collar. I think it says Volkov. It's a Russian name. Common name? Pretty common. But there was something else. A news article from about 2 months ago. It mentioned a Yuri Volkov, some kind of businessman with property in remote Alaska. The article said there'd been an incident at his estate. Possible break-in, authorities investigating. Clay felt something cold settle in his gut. Where was the estate? About 200 miles south of here. Middle of nowhere, private road, the whole isolated rich person setup. Micah turned the screen to show Clay a grainy photo of a massive log structure surrounded by forest. Look at the date. The incident happened 10 weeks ago. And there's this. He clicked to another article. This one newer. Volkov was missing. Presumed dead. The estate had been found burned, multiple structures destroyed. Signs of violence. Local and federal authorities were investigating, but no suspects had been identified. A dog could cover 200 miles in 10 weeks, Micah said, especially if he was running from something. Clay studied the photos, the burned buildings, the scorched earth. This wasn't a simple break-in. This was an assault, professional and devastating, and somehow Titan had survived it. We need to call Dale, Micah said, and tell him what? That we think this dog might have belonged to a dead Russian businessman. Yeah, exactly that. Clay shook his head. Not yet. First, I need to make a call. He went to the bedroom, retrieved his old satellite phone from the footlocker. The battery was dead, but he had a charger. While it powered up, he explained to Micah about Marcus Webb, his old team leader, the man who'd pulled him out of more firefights than Clay could count. Webb works private security now. High-end stuff. If anyone knows what's really going on with Volkov, it'll be him. The sat phone took 20 minutes to charge enough to make a call. When Clay dialed Webb's number, he wasn't sure the man would even pick up. They hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since Sarah's funeral. But on the third ring, Webb's voice came through, rough and familiar. Clay Harner, thought you were dead. Not yet. You got a minute? For you. Always. What's wrong? Clay told him about Titan, about the collar, about Volkov. He heard Webb go quiet on the other end, that particular silence that meant bad news was coming. Clay, listen to me very carefully. You found Volkov's dog? Looks like it. You need to get rid of it. Now. Tonight. Drive it to Anchorage. Drop it at a shelter and forget you ever saw it. Why? Because people are looking for that animal. Dangerous people, the kind you and I used to hunt. Clay felt his grip tighten on the phone. What kind of people? Webb sighed, and Clay could picture him rubbing his face, that gesture he made when a mission went sideways. Volkov wasn't just a businessman. He was FSB, Russian intelligence, defector, supposedly, working with the FBI. Had information, leverage, the kind of stuff that makes powerful people nervous. And the dog? Security, protection. Volkov spent a fortune training that animal. Some people think the dog might know where Volkov kept his insurance files. Digital evidence, blackmail material, whatever. Point is, if you have that dog, you're sitting on something extremely valuable and extremely dangerous. What happened to Volkov? Nobody knows for sure. Estate was hit hard, professional job. Bodies were found, none of them Volkov's. He's either dead or in the wind. Either way, the people who want what he had are still looking. Clay watched Titan through the doorway, saw the way the dog had positioned himself between the front door and Micah. Protecting. Always protecting. The dog doesn't know anything, Clay said. He's just a dog. Maybe. But the people looking for him won't take your word for it. Clay, I'm serious. Get rid of it. If not for yourself, then for that boy of yours. You don't want these people coming to your door." After Clay hung up, he sat on the bed for a long time, the sat phone in his hands, Sarah's wedding ring cold against his chest. He thought about Webb's warning, about the boot prints in the snow, about the choice he had to make. Micah appeared in the doorway. "What did he say?" "That we should let Titan go." "Are we going to?" Clay looked at his son, really looked at him. The boy who'd grown up without his father being present, who'd learned to live with absence and silence. The boy who, in the past 24 hours, had smiled more than Clay had seen in 3 years, all because of a dog that needed saving. "No," Clay said. "We're not." "What are we going to do?" Clay stood, felt something shift inside him, a decision made, a line crossed. "We're going to figure out what Titan knows, and then we're going to keep him safe. Even if people come looking, especially if people come looking." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the promise of more snow. Clay checked the perimeter one more time, saw nothing but white wilderness and the tracks that someone had left behind. A calling card, a warning. Let them come, he thought. He'd been numb for 3 years, sleepwalking through life, letting grief define him. But standing here now, with his son beside him and a mission that mattered, Clay felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. He felt alive. 3 days snowbound, and the cabin had transformed into something Clay barely recognized. Not the space itself, but the feeling of it. There was noise now, conversation, even laughter. Micah talked while he worked with Titan, teaching the dog tricks that the animal already knew, just enjoying the process of connection. Clay cooked meals for 3 instead of 1, setting a bowl on the floor for Titan, who ate with careful, deliberate bites. The routine felt right in a way Clay couldn't explain. Morning coffee while watching Titan patrol the perimeter through the window. Micah asking questions about Clay's service, actually listening to the answers. Evening meals where they sat together, not in silence but in the comfortable quiet of people who'd found their rhythm. But underneath it all ran a current of tension. The boot prints in the snow hadn't reappeared, but Clay knew they would. Whoever was watching hadn't gone away. They were just waiting, planning, preparing. On the 3rd evening, Micah found the footlocker. Clay had left it open, meaning to put everything back, but getting distracted. He came out of the shower to find his son sitting on the bed, Clay's dress uniform laid out carefully beside him, medals in hand. "Silver Star," Micah said quietly, holding up the decoration. "What's this one for?" Clay toweled his hair, considered lying, decided against it. "Afghanistan, 2003. We were pinned down, took fire from 3 sides. I made it possible for my team to extract. Made it possible how? By drawing fire, keeping them focused on me while the others got clear." Micah set the medal down with reverence that made Clay's chest tight. "You could have died. That was the job. And this one." He held up another medal, the Navy Cross. "Same deployment, different day." Micah looked up at him, eyes wide. "Dad, these are like serious. Why didn't you ever tell me?" Clay sat beside him on the bed, the mattress sagging under his weight. "Because that was somebody else. That was before your mother, before you, before I learned there were things more important than being the first through the door. But you were good at it. The military stuff. Being good at something doesn't mean it's who you are." They sat in silence, Micah running his fingers over the ribbons, Clay watching his son discover a part of him that had been hidden. Finally, Micah spoke. "When Mom died, you just shut down. Stopped talking, stopped being there. I thought maybe you didn't care anymore." The words hit like rounds, each one finding its mark. "Micah, let me finish. I thought you didn't care. But looking at this, understanding what you used to do, I get it now. You're the kind of person who runs toward danger, who puts themselves between other people and bad things. When Mom was sick, You couldn't do that. You couldn't fight it, couldn't draw its fire, couldn't save her. So you shut down. Clay felt his throat tighten. I should have been stronger, for you. You're human, Dad. You lost the person you loved most. You're allowed to break. Not when I've got a son who needs me. Micah turned to face him fully. I needed you, past tense. I was angry for a long time, felt abandoned, like I'd lost both parents instead of just one. But you're here now. Really here. That's what matters. Clay pulled Micah into a hug, felt his son return it, and for a moment they just held each other, two people who'd forgotten how. When they separated, Micah wiped his eyes. So what's the plan? With Titan and whoever's looking for him. We keep him safe. Figure out what he knows, if anything, and we prepare for contact. Contact with who? Whoever made those boot prints. Clay spent the next hour teaching Micah basic security protocols, how to watch approaches without being obvious, how to recognize professional surveillance, how to use the radio if they got separated. Micah absorbed it all like he'd been waiting his whole life for his father to teach him something real. Titan participated too, his military training evident in how he responded to perimeter checks, how he positioned himself strategically, how his eyes tracked movement outside the windows. This wasn't a pet. This was a working animal, and being back in that mindset seemed to settle something in him. That night, Clay tried the sat phone again. Webb answered on the first ring. You didn't get rid of the dog. How'd you know? Because you're still breathing. If you'd tried to move it, they would have intercepted you. Clay felt cold settle in his bones. They're watching us. Of course they're watching you. Clay, this is serious. These aren't local thugs. This is organized, well-funded, and professional. Who are they? Could be Russian intelligence trying to tie up loose ends. Could be private contractors hired by someone Volkov had dirt on. Hell, could be our own people if Volkov's files implicate the wrong Americans. Point is, they want that dog, and they'll go through you to get it. Let them try. Don't be stupid. You've got your boy there. Which is why I'm not giving up. Micah's been through enough. I'm not teaching him that the answer to danger is surrender. Webb was quiet for a moment. You're really going to dig in. I'm really going to dig in. Then you need to know what you're dealing with. Volkov wasn't just FSB. He was a handler, ran agents, collected intelligence. When he defected, he brought insurance. Files, recordings, evidence of Russian money flowing into American politics at the highest levels. The kind of stuff that could bring down governments. And the dog? Rumor is Volkov trained the dog as a failsafe, programmed him to return to a specific location if Volkov was ever killed. Location where the backup files are hidden. Clay watched Titan, who had his head on Micah's lap, the boy scratching behind his ears. The dog's a key. The dog's a living map to the biggest intelligence leak in a decade, and everyone wants what he knows. After Clay hung up, he sat in the dark, thinking. If Titan knew where Volkov's files were, that explained the surveillance, the professional approach. These people weren't here to kill them. They were here to follow, to see where Titan led, to wait for the right moment to take everything, which meant Clay had options. Leverage. Micah came out of his room, found Clay staring at the sat phone. What did Webb say? That we're in deeper than I thought. How deep? Deep enough that we need to be ready for anything. Are you scared? Clay considered the question, the honest answer. I'm focused. Fear comes later when you have time for it. Micah sat beside him. I'm glad I'm here. With you, even with all this. Yeah? Yeah. For the first time in years, I feel like I have my dad back. Clay put his arm around his son's shoulders. You never lost me. I just lost myself for a while. Outside, the wind howled, and somewhere in the darkness, Clay knew eyes were watching, waiting, planning. But inside this cabin, for the first time in 3 years, he had something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. And that made all the difference. Morning came with the sound of snowmobiles in the distance. Clay was up before dawn, coffee already made, watching the tree line. When Dale Pruitt pulled up on his machine, Clay met him on the porch. "Got a situation?" Dale said, killing the engine. He pulled off his helmet and his face was grim. "Found tracks this morning. Professional setup, 2 people minimum, military movement patterns. They circled your property last night." Clay nodded. "I know. Saw them 3 days ago. And you didn't call me. What were you going to do in 3 feet of snow?" Dale climbed off the snowmobile, followed Clay inside. Titan greeted him with a low growl that turned into cautious acceptance when Clay gave the hand signal for stand down. "That's the dog," Dale said. "Not a question. That's the dog. Hell of an animal." Dale accepted coffee, sat at the kitchen table. "I got a call yesterday. FBI, they asked about a missing K9. Gave me a description that matches your friend here. Said they were coordinating with local law enforcement to recover it." "What did you tell them?" "That I'd check around. But Clay, if the FBI's involved..." "It's not FBI." Dale raised an eyebrow. "You know this how?" Clay told him. "About Volkov, about the files, about the people watching his cabin." Dale listened without interrupting, his cop face on, processing information the way he'd been trained. When Clay finished, the sheriff sat back, shook his head. "You're in serious trouble." "I know. These people, whoever they are, they're not going to just ask nicely for the dog." "I know that too. So what's your play?" Clay looked at Titan, who had positioned himself between the front door and Micah's bedroom, protective even in rest. "Keep him safe. Figure out what he knows. Make sure nobody takes him against his will. Clay, this isn't Afghanistan. You can't just dig in and fight. This is American soil, and I'm the law here. Then help me. Give me time to figure this out before it goes sideways." Dale was quiet for a long moment, looking between Clay and the dog. Finally, he sighed. 24 hours. That's all I can give you. After that, I have to make an official report. 24 hours is enough. After Dale left, Clay began fortifying. He checked weapons, cleaned and loaded his old M9, retrieved the shotgun from the hall closet. He established sight lines from every window, noted approaches, created fallback positions. Micah watched, asked questions, learned. "You really think they'll come?" "They're already here. Question is when they'll make contact." By noon, Clay had transformed the cabin into a defensible position. Not military grade, but better than civilian. He taught Micah how to watch the approaches without being obvious, how to recognize threats, how to use the emergency radio if things went wrong. Titan seemed to understand what was happening. He increased his patrols, checked windows, positioned himself strategically. This was what he'd been trained for, and the muscle memory ran deep. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. The sat phone buzzed, and Clay answered to find an unfamiliar voice on the line. Calm, professional, slight accent he couldn't place. "Mr. Harner, my name is Daniel Cross. I represent interests that need the animal you're harboring. We'd like to discuss terms." "I'm not harboring anything. I found an injured dog. Please, let's not waste time with pretense. We know you have Volkov's asset. We know you've been making inquiries. We're prepared to compensate you generously for its return. The dog's not for sale. $50,000. Cash. You keep the money. We take the animal. Everyone walks away happy." Clay felt his grip tighten on the phone. "And if I refuse?" "We'd prefer cooperation. It's easier for everyone, especially for that son of yours." The threat wasn't even veiled. Clay's voice went flat, cold. "You mention my son again, and there won't be a discussion." A pause. Then Cross chuckled. I see. Former military? Yes? I should have expected resistance. Mr. Harner, we're not your enemy. We're simply contractors fulfilling an obligation. This doesn't have to be complicated. Then why the surveillance? Why the midnight recon? Verification. We needed to confirm what we suspected. The dog responds to you. That's interesting. Volkov trained him to trust former service members, handlers specifically. You fit the profile. What do you really want? Face-to-face conversation, tomorrow morning, dawn, just you and me. Professional discussion. I think we can reach an arrangement. Clay considered refusing, but Webb's words came back to him. These people were professional. If he didn't meet them on his terms, they'd make contact on theirs. Better to control the engagement. Dawn, front yard. You come alone. I come alone. Agreed. Mr. Harner, this can be peaceful. We're not looking for conflict. Then you won't find any. After he hung up, Clay found Micah in the living room, pale and shaking. Did he really threaten me? He tried to. Didn't work. What if they come for us? Clay knelt in front of his son, hands on his shoulders. Then we deal with it. Together. But Micah, I need you to trust me. I've handled worse than this. Have you really? Afghanistan, 2003. We were surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. Made it home anyway. This is just another tactical problem. We approach it the same way. Assess, prepare, execute. That evening, Clay set up a perimeter defense. Not elaborate, just practical. Motion sensors from his hunting gear, positioned to cover approaches. Trip wires connected to bells, old school but effective. A go bag by the back door with food, water, first aid, and ammunition. Micah helped, learning as they worked. Clay taught him how to move quietly, how to use cover, how to think 3 steps ahead. The boy was a quick study, and Clay felt something swell in his chest. Pride, maybe, or just the simple satisfaction of teaching his son something real. You're different, Micah said as they finished. These past few days, you're like a different person. I'm remembering who I used to be. Do you like it, being that person again? Clay thought about it, honest with himself and his son. I like having a purpose, something that matters. For 3 years I've been going through motions. This feels real. Titan joined them on the porch, massive and calm, his eyes scanning the tree line. Clay rested a hand on the dog's head, felt the animal lean into his touch. You think he knows? Micah asked. About tomorrow? He knows something's coming. Animals sense these things better than we do. Are you scared? Clay looked at his son. I'm focused. Fear's a tool, not a handicap. You use it to stay sharp, stay aware. But you don't let it control you. Will you teach me how to do that? I'm already teaching you. You just have to pay attention. That night, Clay took first watch while Micah slept. He sat in the dark living room, rifle across his lap, Titan at his feet. Outside, the forest was quiet, but Clay knew better than to trust quiet. Quiet was when bad things positioned themselves, when plans became action. Dawn would bring answers, and depending on those answers, either peace or war. Clay was ready for both. Clay woke Micah at 4 a.m, both of them moving in the dark cabin like shadows. They'd discussed the plan before bed, and Micah knew his role. If things went wrong, if Clay gave the signal, Micah was to take Titan and disappear into the woods, following a route they'd mapped out. Make his way to Dale's office in town, let the sheriff handle it from there. I don't want to leave you, Micah had said, and I don't want you in the line of fire. That's not negotiable. Now, as dawn approached, Clay positioned Micah in the workshop, a small building 20 yards from the main cabin with a clear view of the front yard. He gave his son the emergency radio, showed him how to trigger the signal if needed. You remember what I taught you about threat assessment? Watch their hands. Hands kill, not words. Good. If you see weapons drawn, if you see any movement that looks aggressive, you call Dale and then you run. Don't wait for me. Don't try to help. Just run. Micah nodded, scared but determined. Be careful, Dad. Always am. Clay returned to the cabin, checked his weapon, and waited. Titan stood beside him, calm but alert. The dog knew something was happening and his training had him ready. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful and cold, the kind of morning that made you grateful to be alive. Clay watched from the window as two figures emerged from the tree line, moving with the confidence of professionals. Daniel Cross was tall, mid-40s, with the bearing of a career soldier. His companion was a woman, shorter, athletic, dark hair pulled back in a tactical braid. Both wore civilian winter gear, but Clay recognized the way they moved. Special operations, probably. The kind of people who made problems disappear. Clay stepped onto the porch, rifle slung casually over his shoulder, hands visible. That's close enough. Cross stopped 20 feet out, raised his hands to show they were empty. Mr. Harner, thank you for meeting with us. You mentioned compensation. Let's hear it. Straight to business. I respect that. Cross gestured to his companion. This is Elena Vasquez. She's my intelligence specialist. Elena nodded, her eyes scanning the cabin, the tree line, the workshop. Professional assessment, looking for threats and advantages. Clay saw her gaze linger on the workshop, knew she'd spotted Micah. We're authorized to offer you $100,000 for the animal, Cross said. Cash, untraceable, yours to keep. All we ask is that you surrender the dog and forget this ever happened. Generous. But I'm not interested in money. Then what are you interested in? Truth. What do you really want with Titan? Cross smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We want what Volkov programmed him to find. The dog knows the location of files that are valuable to our client. We retrieve those files. Everyone wins. Everyone except Volkov. Volkov made choices that had consequences. That's not our concern. Clay studied them, the way they stood, the way they watched. These weren't random contractors. These were professionals with resources and backing. But there was something in Elena's posture, a tension that suggested discomfort. What's on these files? Clay asked. Does it matter? It does to me. Cross's smile faded. Mr. Harner, you're a civilian now. This is above your pay grade. Take the money, give us the dog, and go back to your quiet life. My quiet life ended when I found him half dead in the woods. Then perhaps you should have left him there. The threat was subtle, but Clay caught it. Cross wasn't just here to negotiate. He was here to assess whether Clay would be a problem that needed solving. Here's my counteroffer, Clay said. You leave, now. Take your surveillance, your offers, and your threats. The dog stays with me. That would be unwise. Maybe, but it's my choice. Elena spoke for the first time, her voice carrying an accent Clay couldn't place. Mr. Harner, we understand you have military experience. You should know that this situation is larger than one man and one dog. The people we work for don't accept failure. Then they should have sent more than 2 people. Cross's expression hardened. There are others. We're just the diplomatic approach. If you refuse, the next conversation won't be so pleasant. I've had plenty of unpleasant conversations. I'm still here. From the workshop, Clay saw movement. Micah, watching, recording this on his phone. Smart kid. Webb's email came through on the sat phone at that exact moment, the vibration subtle against Clay's leg. He'd asked Webb to send information about Volkov's estate, anything that might give him leverage. The timing couldn't have been better. One thing before you go, Clay said. The estate. What really happened there? Something flickered in Cross's eyes. What makes you think we know? Because you're here. Because you knew exactly where to find this dog. Because you're not surprised he survived. Elena shifted, her hand moving toward her jacket. Clay saw it, but didn't react. Showing you noticed was as good as making a move. Instead, he kept his eyes on Cross. The estate was a tactical operation, Cross said finally. Professional, clean. Volkov knew too much, held too much power. Someone decided he needed to be removed. And the dog? Was supposed to be eliminated with him. Apparently, that didn't happen. Clay felt tight and tense beside him, the dog's memory of that night surfacing. He rested a hand on the animal's head, calming him. So you're here to finish the job. We're here to recover an asset. What happens to the animal after we get what we need isn't your concern. It is now. Cross stepped closer, his tone hardening. Mr. Harner, I've been polite. I've offered you money. I've explained the situation. But make no mistake, we will get that dog. The only question is whether you're alive or dead when we do. Clay's response was calm, measured. You're on my property. You're threatening my family. And you're telling me you plan to kill a dog that's done nothing except survive. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk back to wherever you came from. You're going to tell your client the dog is off the table, and you're going to hope I don't decide to make this personal. This is already personal. No. Personal is when I start looking into who you work for. Personal is when I use my contacts to find out which politician or oligarch is scared enough of Volkov's files to send contractors after a dog. Personal is when I make sure everyone knows what you're really doing here. Elena's hand was on her weapon now, and Clay saw the calculation in her eyes. She was good, probably faster than Cross, but she was also hesitant, conflicted about something. We'll be back, Cross said, with less pleasant methods. I'll be ready. They left the way they came, disappearing into the trees. Clay watched them go, his heart pounding but his hands steady. Micah emerged from the workshop, phone in hand. I got it all, every word. Good. Upload it to web, send it to Dale, and keep a copy hidden. If something happens to us, that video goes public. Do you think they'll really come back? Clay looked at Titan, at the scars on his shoulder, at the intelligence in his eyes. Yeah, but next time, we'll be ready. Webb's email arrived an hour after Cross left, and what Clay read made his blood run cold. He called Micah inside, closed the curtains, and laid it all out on the kitchen table. Satellite images, intelligence reports, things that Webb shouldn't have been able to access but had anyway. The estate fire hadn't been random. The assault had been coordinated, professional, expensive. Multiple teams, military-grade equipment, the kind of operation that cost millions to execute. But the most damning detail was in the casualty list. 7 bodies recovered, Clay read aloud. All identified as Volkov's security personnel. No sign of Volkov himself, and no sign of anyone else. Anyone else? Micah asked. Clay pulled up another document, this one from a FBI witness protection database that Webb had somehow accessed. Volkov's family history. Wife, deceased 5 years ago. One son, 10 years old. Name, Alexei. Volkov had a kid, Micah breathed. Had. Past tense. According to the official report, the boy died in the fire. But Titan was the boy's dog, personal protection, trained specifically to guard Alexei. If the dog survived, if he made it 200 miles through wilderness, then maybe the kid survived too. Clay sat back, the implications cascading through his mind. This wasn't about intelligence files or blackmail material. This was about a child, a 10-year-old boy who'd witnessed his father's murder, who might be the only living proof of who ordered the hit. The sat phone rang. Clay answered, and Webb's voice came through urgent and strained. Clay, listen. That recording Micah sent me. I ran voice analysis on Cross. He's not after files. The whole conversation was misdirection. I know, it's about the boy. You figured it out. Good. But it's worse than you think. Alexei isn't dead. He's in FBI protective custody. Location classified. But someone leaked his survival to the wrong people. Cross's team, whoever hired them, they're not looking for Titan to find files. They're looking for Titan to find Alexei. Why would the dog know where the FBI is hiding him? Because Volkov was paranoid. He programmed Titan with a backup protocol. If Volkov died and Alexei survived, the dog would be able to track the boy. Scent memory, location training, something. Point is, that dog is the only way to find a child in witness protection. And once they find him, Webb's silence was answer enough. Clay felt rage build in his chest, clean and focused. They're going to kill a 10-year-old kid. The kid's a witness. He saw who hit the estate, knows who his father was dealing with. That information is worth killing for. Where's Alexei now? I don't know. FBI's got him locked down tight. But Clay, if Cross's team gets Titan, they'll make the dog lead them right to him, and there's nothing you or I can do to stop it. After Clay hung up, he sat in stunned silence. Micah was across from him, pale but steady. We can't let them take Titan, Micah said. We won't. But Dad, if the FBI has Alexei, he's safe, right? They can protect him. From external threats, maybe. But Webb said someone leaked the boy's survival. That means there's a mole in the FBI or someone with access to classified information. The same people who sent Cross might be the same people who know where Alexei is. Then what do we do? Clay stood, paced, his mind working through tactical problems the way it had in another life. We find Alexei first. We get to him before Cross does. We bring him somewhere actually safe. How? We don't know where he is. Clay looked at Titan, who'd been following the conversation with those intelligent eyes. But Titan does. He knelt beside the dog, pulled out the collar, examined it more carefully. Hidden in the inner lining was a small pocket, sealed with Velcro. Inside was a piece of fabric, child-sized, worn soft from handling. A shirt, maybe, or part of a blanket. Alexei's scent. Titan's reaction was immediate. He whined, pressed his nose to the fabric, his whole body trembling with recognition. This wasn't just a scent article for tracking. This was memory, connection, the bond between a boy and his dog. He remembers, Micah whispered. Clay gave the command in Russian, the words Webb had sent him in the email. Find, protect. Titan's ears perked up, and he moved to the door, paced, agitated. He wants to go to Alexei, Clay said, but we can't just let him run. Cross's team is out there, watching, waiting for exactly this. As if on cue, the sat phone buzzed. Unknown number. Clay answered, and an unfamiliar voice came through. Young, scared, trying to be brave. Is this Clay Harner? Who's asking? My name is Alexei Volkov. Please, you have to help me. They're coming. The people here, I don't think they're really FBI. Please, I need Titan. I need my dog. Clay's world stopped. Alexei, where are you? I don't know. A safe house, they said. But I heard them talking. They said something about contractors, about making me disappear. I think they're going to hurt me. How did you get this number? I stole a phone. I saw your name on a FBI report. It said you had Titan. Please, you have to bring him. He'll protect me. Papa said he'd always protect me. Clay made a decision in that instant, the kind of call that couldn't be unmade. Alexei, I'm going to find you, but I need you to be brave for a little longer. Can you do that? I can try. Good. Don't tell anyone you called me. Hide the phone, and if anyone comes for you before I get there, you run. You hear me? You run and you don't stop. Okay, hurry. Please hurry. The line went dead. Clay looked at Micah, at Titan, at the choice he'd just made. They could call Dale, hand this off to authorities, let the system handle it. That would be the safe play, the smart play, but the system had already failed Alexei once. Someone inside it had betrayed him, put him in danger. If Clay walked away now, that boy would die, and Clay would have to live with that for the rest of his life. "We're going after him," Micah said. Not a question. "Yeah, we are. What about Cross? What about the people watching us?" Clay moved to the window, looked out at the forest, at the pristine snow that hid so many dangers. "They think we don't know about Alexei. They think they're still playing us. That's our advantage." He pulled out a map, spread it on the table. Based on Titan's reaction and Webb's intelligence about FBI safe house locations, there were 3 possibilities within 200 miles. Remote locations, off-grid, perfect for hiding a witness. "We need to narrow it down," Micah said. Clay studied Titan's body language, the direction the dog kept pulling toward. South. Always south. He cross-referenced with the map, eliminated 2 of the 3 safe houses. That left one possibility, a cabin in the mountains about 40 miles away. "There," Clay said, marking it. "That's where they're holding him." "How can you be sure?" "I can't, but Titan is. And right now, that's all we have." They packed quickly, efficiently, go bags with food, water, medical supplies. Weapons, ammunition, things Clay had sworn he'd never need again. Micah moved like he'd been training for this his whole life. And maybe, in a way, he had been. The son of a Marine, learning by osmosis even when his father wasn't teaching. Dale arrived just as they were loading the truck. He took one look at their faces, the gear, the determination, and shook his head. "What are you about to do?" "Something necessary," Clay said. "Clay, this isn't your fight." "It became my fight the moment a scared kid called asking for help." Dale processed that, his cop instincts warring with his loyalty to a friend. Finally, he sighed. "How long do you need?" 24 hours. Maybe less. "I can give you 12. After that, I have to call it in." 12 is enough." Clay climbed into the truck, Micah beside him, Titan in the back. As they pulled away from the cabin, he saw Cross's team watching from the tree line. They thought they were being clever, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They had no idea Clay was about to beat them to the prize. The race was on. And this time, Clay wasn't fighting for territory or objectives or orders from someone above him. He was fighting for something that actually mattered. He was fighting for a child's life. The drive took them through mountain passes that tested the truck's limits and Clay's nerves. Snow had started falling again, thick and heavy, reducing visibility to maybe 50 yards. Micah navigated using the GPS while Clay drove, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. Titan rode in the back seat, alert and focused, his nose occasionally lifting to the wind when Clay cracked the window. The dog knew where they were going, even if Clay didn't. Every mile brought them closer to Alexei, and you could see it in Titan's posture, the way his muscles tensed with anticipation. "We're being followed," Micah said quietly, checking the side mirror. Clay had seen them 10 minutes ago. Black SUV, professional distance, never quite close enough to be obvious, but always there. Cross's team, shadowing them, waiting to see where they led. "Let them follow," Clay said. "When we get close, we'll lose them." "How?" "Same way we shook Taliban in the Hindu Kush. You use the terrain." Webb called again, and Clay answered on speaker. "Please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing." "Depends what you think I'm doing." "Going after the kid yourself." "Clay, this is insane. Let the FBI handle it." "The FBI put him in danger. Someone inside leaked his location, leaked that he survived. For all we know, the safe house is compromised." "Then call it in. Report the leak. Let them move him to a new location. No time. Alexei said people at the safe house were talking about contractors. That means Cross already has people inside, or the FBI agents guarding him are dirty. Either way, we can't trust official channels. Webb was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was resigned. You need backup? Can you get here in time? I'm in Seattle. 6-hour drive minimum, and that's if the roads are clear. Then no. But I need something else. Intel on the safe house. Blueprints, agent assignments, anything you can find. That's going to take time. You've got 3 hours. We'll be there by then. After he hung up, Micah asked, Is Webb going to help? He'll do what he can, but this is on us. They stopped once at a gas station in a small mountain town. Clay used the opportunity to lose the tail. He sent Micah inside to buy supplies while he performed a trick he'd learned in Iraq. Waited until the SUV pulled into the lot, then drove around back, killed the lights, and watched. The SUV parked 3 spaces from the entrance, 2 men inside, waiting. Clay climbed out, moved through the shadows to the SUV, and slashed 2 tires with his combat knife. Quick, quiet, professional. By the time they noticed, he was back in his truck, pulling onto the highway with Micah beside him and Titan in back. That'll buy us an hour, Clay said. Maybe 2 if they have to wait for replacements. The safe house came into view an hour later, a cabin set back from the road, surrounded by forest, accessible only by a narrow driveway that looked like it hadn't been plowed in days, perfect for isolation, terrible for escape. Clay parked a mile out and approached on foot with Micah and Titan. The snow helped, covering their tracks almost as fast as they made them. Through binoculars, Clay assessed the situation. 3 vehicles outside. 2 marked as FBI, 1 civilian SUV, lights on inside, smoke coming from the chimney. 4 agents visible through the windows, 2 playing cards, 2 standing guard. Standard protective custody setup. Except something was wrong. The guards weren't positioned correctly. They were watching the interior more than the exterior, like they were keeping someone in rather than keeping threats out. Those aren't FBI, Clay said. How do you know? Body language. Positioning. FBI trains their protective details to watch approaches, to think about threat vectors. These guys are watching the door to the room where they're keeping Alexei. So they're what? Contractors pretending to be FBI? Or FBI agents who've been bought? Either way, we're not walking through the front door. Webb's email came through on the sat phone with building specs. The safe house was a 3-bedroom cabin, 2 exits, basement accessible from outside through a storm cellar. Clay studied the layout, formed a plan. We go in through the basement, he told Micah. Quiet and fast. Find Alexei, extract him, disappear before they know what happened. What if they resist? Then I handle it. Clay saw the fear in his son's eyes, but also determination. Micah understood what was at stake. A child's life hung in the balance, and moral complexity took a back seat to simple human decency. They moved at dusk, using the fading light as cover. Titan led the way, silent as a ghost, his training making him invisible despite his size. The storm cellar doors were locked, but Clay had come prepared. Lock picks from his old kit, muscle memory taking over as his fingers worked the mechanism. Inside, the basement was dark and cold, filled with storage boxes and old furniture. Clay could hear voices above them, muffled through the floorboards, men laughing, relaxed, not expecting trouble. Micah, you stay here with Titan. I'm going up. Dad, not negotiable. If something goes wrong, you take Alexei and run. There's a creek about half a mile east. Follow it downstream. It'll take you to a ranger station. I don't want to leave you. Clay gripped his son's shoulder. If I don't come back, you make sure that boy survives. You make sure this meant something. Promise me. Micah's voice cracked. I promise. Clay moved up the basement stairs, every sense heightened, every nerve alive. This was familiar territory, the kind of operation he'd run 100 times in 100 different places. Breach, clear, extract. The target was different, but the fundamentals remained the same. At the top of the stairs, he paused, listened. 2 voices in the kitchen, talking about a football game. Another voice from the living room making a phone call, something about timing and schedules. No mention of Alexei. Clay checked his weapon, took a breath, and made his move. He came through the door fast and quiet, weapon up, scanning for threats. The 2 men in the kitchen turned, reached for their guns, but Clay was faster. "Don't," he said, voice calm and absolute. "Hands where I can see them." They complied, training overriding instinct. These were professionals, but so was Clay, and he had surprise on his side. "Where's the boy?" "Who the hell are you?" one of them demanded. "Someone who knows you're not FBI. Real agents don't let a 10-year-old's location leak to contractors." "Where is he?" The man in the living room appeared, gun drawn. "Drop your weapon." "Can't do that, but here's what I can do. I can leave with the boy and forget I saw you. Or I can make a lot of noise, attract attention, and let the real FBI sort out why you're here pretending to be them. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty. This isn't one of them." A door opened down the hall and a small face appeared. Dark hair, wide eyes, terrified. "Alexei." The boy looked at Clay, then passed him to the basement door where Titan had just emerged, the dog's massive frame filling the doorway. "Titan!" Alexei's voice broke with relief and joy. Everything happened at once. Alexei ran for the dog. The man in the living room swung his gun toward the boy. Clay moved on instinct, firing twice, center mass, dropping the threat before he could pull the trigger. The 2 in the kitchen went for their weapons, and Clay pivoted, training taking over, muscle memory, and 20 years of combat experience compressing into 5 seconds of controlled violence. When it was over, 3 men were on the floor, wounded but alive. Clay had aimed to disable, not kill. He wasn't a murderer, just someone who'd learned how to win when winning mattered. Alexei was buried in Titan's fur, sobbing, the dog licking his face with desperate affection. The reunion was beautiful and heartbreaking, a boy and his dog finding each other after unspeakable trauma. Micah appeared from the basement, took one look at the scene and nodded. "We need to move." Clay was already there. He grabbed Alexei's hand, gentle but firm. "We're leaving, right now. Can you run?" The boy nodded, trusting completely. Titan stayed close, protective, his whole body radiating purpose. They were halfway to the door when it burst open and Cross stepped through, gun drawn, Elena behind him. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Cross smiled, cold and professional. "Mr. Harner, I should have known you'd complicate things." Clay positioned himself between Cross and the children. "Walk away. You've lost." "I don't think so. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. 3 against 2. I'll take those odds. You're forgetting my team outside." As if on cue, headlights swept through the windows. More vehicles, more contractors. Clay had walked into exactly the trap he'd hoped to avoid. But then Elena did something unexpected. She stepped away from Cross, raised her weapon, and aimed it at him instead of Clay. "Actually," she said quietly, "it's 3 against 1. I'm done killing children for money." Cross's smile vanished. "You're making a career-ending mistake, Elena." "I'm making the right choice. Something you forgot how to do." Clay took advantage of the distraction, moved toward the back door with Micah, Alexei, and Titan. Elena covered their retreat, her weapon steady on Cross. "You won't make it far," Cross called after them. "I have people everywhere." "Then they'll have to catch us first," Clay shouted back. They burst into the night, running through snow and darkness, Titan leading the way, Alexei's hand tight in Micah's, Clay bringing up the rear. Behind them, gunfire erupted, Elena buying them time with her life. They reached the truck, piled in, and Clay gunned the engine. As they pulled away, he saw Cross emerge from the cabin, phone to his ear, already calling in reinforcements. The chase was on. But this time, Clay had what he'd come for. A scared boy who'd lost everything, a dog who'd never given up, and a chance to make something good come from all this darkness. Now they just had to survive long enough to see it through. The truck fish-tailed on the mountain road, tires fighting for purchase on ice and snow. Clay kept his foot steady on the gas, eyes scanning the road ahead and the mirrors behind. Headlights appeared in the distance, closing fast. Cross hadn't wasted time. "How many?" Micah asked, his arm around Alexei, who was pressed against Titan in the back seat. "3 vehicles. Maybe 4. Clay took a sharp turn, felt the truck slide, corrected instinctively. "They're organized. Professional pursuit formation." Alexei's voice was small, scared. "Are they going to kill us?" "No," Clay said with absolute conviction. "I won't let that happen." The boy looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, lost too much. "Papa said that too, right before they came." Clay met his gaze in the rearview mirror. "I'm not your father, Alexei, but I'm a man who keeps his promises, and I promise you we're getting out of this." The road ahead forked. Left led deeper into the mountains, eventually to a ranger station, but through treacherous passes. Right led back toward Burn Ridge, toward town, toward help. Both options had risks. Both could end badly. Clay chose left, higher ground, better defensive positions. If he had to make a stand, he wanted terrain on his side. The first gunshots came 10 minutes later. Bullets sparked off the road behind them, wild shots meant to intimidate more than hit. Cross's team keeping pressure, forcing mistakes. "Get down," Clay ordered. Micah pushed Alexei low, covered him with his body. Titan growled, protective instinct overriding fear. Clay took another turn, this one onto a service road he remembered from his early days in Alaska. Narrow, unpaved, barely maintained. The kind of road that would punish pursuit vehicles. His truck had all-wheel drive and ground clearance. The SUVs behind him were built for highways. The gamble paid off. Within a mile, the road deteriorated into little more than a trail. Clay powered through, his marine training reminding him how to read terrain, how to use obstacles as weapons. Behind him, one SUV bottomed out, another got stuck in a drift, but Cross kept coming. Of course he did. Men like Cross didn't quit until the contract was completed, or they were dead. The road ended at an abandoned logging camp, structures rotting back into the forest, equipment rusting under years of snow. Clay pulled to a stop, killed the engine, assessed. "Why are we stopping?" Micah asked. "Because running only works until you run out of road." Clay grabbed his rifle from the gun rack, checked the magazine, chambered a round. Muscle memory from another life, movements so practiced they were automatic. "Micah, take Alexei to that building there, the one that still has most of its roof. Find a way out the back, follow the tree line east. You remember what I taught you about navigation. Use the stars, follow the water. Good. If I'm not behind you in 20 minutes, you keep going. Make it to Dale's office. Tell him everything. Dad, I'm not leaving." "Yes, you are. Because that boy needs someone to protect him, and right now, that's you." Clay gripped his son's shoulder. "I'm proud of you. Everything you've become, everything you've done these past days. Your mother would be proud, too." Micah's eyes filled with tears. "Don't talk like you're not coming back." "I'm coming back, but if I don't, you need to be ready." Clay's wedding ring slipped from its chain during the embrace, fell into the snow between them. He looked at it, that symbol of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else, and made a choice. He didn't pick it up. "Go," he told Micah. His son hesitated. then nodded. He took Alexei's hand, and together with Titan, they disappeared into the maze of abandoned buildings. Clay watched them go, felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the acceptance that some things were worth dying for. Cross's SUV pulled into the clearing 2 minutes later. The man stepped out, weapon ready, scanning for threats. He was alone now, the rest of his team presumably stuck or damaged on the road. "Mr. Harner," Cross called, "it doesn't have to end like this." Clay stepped out from behind a rusted crane, rifle shouldered. "You're right. You could leave. Tell your client the contract's void." "We both know I can't do that." "Then we have a problem." They stood 50 yards apart, two professionals who understood the mathematics of violence. Clay had position, but Cross had movement. 1 shot each, maybe 2 before someone went down. "The boy's seen too much," Cross said. "He knows things that would destroy people in very high places. We can't let him talk. He's 10 years old. Old enough to testify. Old enough to remember faces and names. Old enough to deserve a life." Cross shrugged. "Philosophy is above my pay grade. I have a job. You're in the way of it." "Then I guess you'll have to move me." The standoff stretched, both men calculating angles, distances, probabilities. Clay saw it in Cross's eyes the moment he decided to shoot. Saw the micro-movement as his finger tightened on the trigger. Clay moved first. He'd always been faster. The rifle kicked against his shoulder once, twice, controlled bursts that found their mark. Cross went down, his weapon flying from his hand, blood spreading dark against the snow. Clay approached cautiously, kicked the gun away, knelt beside the fallen contractor. The wounds were serious, but not immediately fatal. Chest and shoulder, through muscle and bone, but missing anything vital. "You're good," Cross wheezed, "but there are others. Always others. Then they'll find the same thing you did." Sirens cut through the night air. Dale's cruiser appeared at the edge of the clearing, lights flashing. The sheriff stepped out, weapon drawn, took in the scene. "Clay, what the hell have you done?" "What needed doing?" Micah emerged from the buildings with Alexei and Titan. The boy ran to Clay, threw his arms around him, and for the first time since the cabin, Clay felt his hands shake. Adrenaline leaving his system, reality catching up. "It's over," he told Alexei. "You're safe now." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't quite true. Cross had said it himself. There were always others. Dale's office became command central. Clay, Micah, and Alexei sat in the small conference room while the sheriff made calls, coordinated with real FBI agents, tried to untangle the mess of corruption and conspiracy that had put a 10-year-old boy in crosshairs. Alexei hadn't let go of Titan since they arrived. The boy sat on the floor, arms wrapped around the dog's massive neck, face buried in fur. Titan bore it patiently, occasionally licking the boy's hair, protective even in stillness. "We need to get his story on record," Dale said to Clay. "Official statement, video testimony, the works. It's the only way to keep him safe long term." "Will that really help?" "Public awareness is protection. If everyone knows what he knows, there's no point in silencing him." Clay looked at Alexei, saw the weight of trauma on such young shoulders. He's a kid. He shouldn't have to carry this. No, he shouldn't, but he does. And we can either help him bear it or let it crush him. Micah had been quiet, his phone in his hands, staring at the screen. Now he looked up. "What if we record everything? Not just his testimony, but the whole story. How we found Titan, what Cross said, all of it. Make it impossible to bury." "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Dale said. "No, I mean, really record it. Post it online, send it to news outlets, make it viral. Not just evidence in a file somewhere, but public knowledge." Clay considered this, the tactical side of his brain working through implications. If Alexei's story became public, if the names he knew and the things he'd seen were broadcast widely, killing him wouldn't help. The damage would already be done. "It's risky," Dale said. "Once that information is out there, we can't control it." "We can't control it anyway," Micah countered. "At least this way, Alexei doesn't have to live in hiding forever." Clay knelt beside Alexei, gentle and patient. "What do you think? Are you ready to tell people what happened?" The boy looked at him with eyes older than they should be. "If I tell, will they stop coming after me?" "I think so. Not because they'll want to, but because they'll have no choice." "And Titan, can he stay with me?" Clay glanced at Dale, who nodded. "I think we can arrange that." Alexei took a shaky breath. "Okay, I'll tell them. Everything Papa told me, everything I saw." Micah set up his phone on a tripod, adjusted the lighting, made sure the audio was clear. Dale stood by, official and protective, and Alexei, with Titan beside him and Clay's hand on his shoulder, began to speak. He told them about his father. Not the businessman the world saw, but the man who'd been a spy, a defector, someone caught between two countries and loyal to neither. About the files Volkov had kept, insurance against the day his past caught up to him. Names of American politicians who'd taken Russian money. Recordings of conversations that proved collusion at the highest levels. Evidence that could topple administrations and destroy careers. He told them about the night the men came. How they'd broken through security. How his father had hidden him in a panic room with Titan. How he'd watched through the security monitors as they executed everyone in the house, searching for the files, searching for him. "Papa had shown me where the files were," Alexei said, his voice steady despite the tears on his cheeks. "He made me memorize the location, the access codes. He said I was the key that I had to survive." "Where are the files?" Dale asked gently. "In a storage facility in Anchorage. Unit 247. The code is 031518, my birthday and Papa's." Micah adjusted the camera, made sure every word was captured. This was evidence, but more than that, it was insurance. Once this video went live, Alexei's knowledge became public. His death would serve no purpose. The boy continued, naming names that made even Clay wince. Senators, judges, business leaders. A network of corruption so vast and deep it seemed impossible. But Alexei spoke with the certainty of someone who'd heard these conversations, who'd been trained by his father to remember everything. When he finished, the room was silent. Dale looked shaken. Micah was pale. Clay felt a weight settle on his shoulders, the responsibility of protecting this truth, this boy. "What happens now?" Alexei asked. "Now we make sure everyone sees this," Clay said. "We send it to every news outlet, every law enforcement agency, every person who needs to know. And then we keep you safe while the world processes it." Dale made the calls. Within an hour, the video was uploaded to secure servers, sent to journalists, delivered to FBI headquarters, with instructions that it be treated as protected testimony. There was no putting this genie back in the bottle. Cross had been taken to the hospital under heavy guard, charged with attempted kidnapping and assault. Elena had survived the firefight at the safe house and was cooperating with authorities. The other contractors were being rounded up, their network dismantled piece by piece. Clay watched it all unfold from Dale's office, Alexei asleep on a couch with Titan on the floor beside him. Micah sat nearby, protective, the brother this boy had never had. "You did good," Dale told Clay. "We did what needed doing. You know this isn't over. There'll be trials, investigations, media circus. That boy's life will never be normal. But he'll have a life. That's what matters." Dale nodded, looked at the sleeping child. "What are you going to do when this settles down?" Clay thought about his cabin, empty and cold. Thought about 3 years of grief and isolation. thought about the past few days, how alive he'd felt, how present, how being needed had pulled him back from the edge he hadn't even known he was walking. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm going to be a father. To both of them." "Both?" Clay looked at Alexei, at the boy who'd lost everything. "He needs someone, and I need—" He didn't finish, but Dale understood. Everyone needed a purpose. Everyone needed something to fight for. Sometimes salvation came buried in the snow. Sometimes it came in the form of a boy who'd lost his father. Sometimes you saved them, sometimes they saved you. Spring came to Burn Ridge the way it always did, slowly and with reluctance. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth and the promise of green things. Clay stood on his porch, coffee in hand, watching Micah and Alexei throw a ball for Titan in the yard. 3 months had passed since that night at the logging camp. 3 months of depositions and interviews, of lawyers and social workers, of paperwork that seemed to multiply like rabbits. But through it all, one thing had remained constant. Alexei was staying with Clay, not temporarily, not until the system found somewhere else to put him. Permanently. The guardianship hearing had been straightforward. With Alexei's mother dead and his father murdered, with no living relatives willing to take a traumatized 10-year-old who came with media attention and security concerns, the state had been relieved when Clay stepped forward. A decorated Marine, stable home, genuine connection to the boy. It helped that Alexei had insisted, had told the judge with absolute certainty that this was where he wanted to be. "This is my family," the boy had said, gesturing to Clay, Micah, and Titan. "This is home." The judge had agreed. Clay Harner, 58 years old, widower and mechanic, became legal guardian to Alexei Volkov. The paperwork was finalized 2 weeks ago. The boy's room was no longer the guest room. It was his, filled with books and toys and the kind of clutter that came from a child building a life. Titan's collar was different now. Clay had removed the tactical gear, replaced it with a simple leather collar bearing a single tag, Titan Harner. The dog had earned the name, earned the family, earned the peace that came from knowing his mission was complete. Alexei was safe. Alexei was home. That was all that mattered. The legal fallout from Alexei's testimony was still unfolding. 3 senators had resigned. 2 federal judges were under investigation. The FBI had opened corruption probes into a dozen high-profile cases. Elena Vasquez, granted immunity for her cooperation, had provided additional evidence that corroborated everything Alexei said. Cross was in federal prison awaiting trial. His lawyers were negotiating a plea deal, trading information for reduced charges. The network he'd been part of was larger than anyone had suspected. Tentacles reaching into government, business, foreign intelligence. Dismantling it would take years. But that wasn't Clay's concern anymore. His concern was the boy laughing in his yard, the son who'd rediscovered his father, and the dog who'd brought them all together. Dale's cruiser pulled into the driveway, and the sheriff climbed out with a package under his arm. "Special delivery," he called. Clay met him halfway, accepted the package. "What is it?" "From Elena. She's starting a new life. Wanted to send something for the boy." Inside the package was a photo of Alexei with his father, taken years ago. Yuri Volkov was smiling, his arm around his son, both of them happy and whole. There was also a letter, handwritten, addressed to Alexei. Clay read it first, making sure it was appropriate. Elena's words were kind, apologetic, full of regret for the pain she'd caused. She thanked Alexei for his bravery, for speaking truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. She told him his father would be proud. "Think he's ready for this?" Dale asked, nodding toward Alexei. "I think he's stronger than we give him credit for." That evening, Clay gave Alexei the package. The boy looked at the photo for a long time, tears streaming down his face, one hand on Titan's head. Micah sat beside him, an arm around his shoulders, the kind of support that brothers gave each other. "Can we keep this?" Alexei asked, holding up the photo. "Of course, it's yours." "Can we put it on the wall, with the pictures of Mama Sarah?" Clay felt his throat tighten. The wall in the living room held photos of Sarah, memories of a life that felt both distant and achingly close. Adding Yuri's photo meant something. It meant the past wasn't something to hide from, but something to honor. "Yeah," Clay said. "We can do that." They hung it that night, right next to a picture of Sarah laughing at a summer barbecue. Two people who'd loved their families, who'd tried to do right, who'd been taken too soon. The wall became a memorial and a promise. Remember, but keep living. Honor the past, but embrace the future. Later, when both boys were asleep, Clay sat on the porch with Titan at his feet. The night was clear, stars brilliant overhead, the kind of Alaska sky that made you feel small and grateful. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd built, about the grief that had nearly destroyed him. She would have loved Alexei, would have loved seeing Micah step into the role of big brother, protective and patient and kind. Would have loved seeing Clay find purpose again, find reasons to wake up each morning beyond simple survival. Titan's head lifted, looking toward the woods. For a moment, Clay tensed, old instincts firing. But it was just a fox, slipping through the shadows, no threat at all. The dog settled, content. There were no more enemies to fight, no more battles to win, just a family trying to heal together. "You did good, boy," Clay said, scratching behind Titan's ears. "Brought us all, together. Gave us something worth fighting for." The dog's tail wagged, slow and content. Inside, Clay heard movement. Alexei having a nightmare, probably. Before Clay could move, Micah's voice came through, gentle and reassuring. The older boy talking the younger one through the fear, using words Clay had taught him, patience Sarah had modeled. Clay stayed on the porch, giving them space to figure it out themselves. This was family now. Not perfect, not traditional, but real. Two boys who'd lost too much, one man trying to be enough for both of them, and a dog who'd saved them all. Sometimes the things we save end up saving us. Clay had learned that truth in the snow 3 months ago. Every day since had been proof. He looked at Titan's new collar, at the name tag catching moonlight. Hana. Not Volkov's dog anymore, not a weapon or a tool. Just family. Just home. Clay finished his coffee, stood, stretched. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Legal matters to handle, appointments to keep, the ordinary chaos of raising two boys in the Alaskan wilderness. He was looking forward to it. For the first time in 3 years, Clay Harner was looking forward to tomorrow. He stepped inside, locked the door, and joined his sons in the warm light of home.